Amma ba'd. As we begin, Allah He mentioned in Surah Qiyamah, Balil insanu ala nafsihi basira. That on Yawmul Qiyamah, when we all stand in front of Allah, we'll find that we are testifying against ourselves. Balil insan, rather insan, ala nafsi, over his own soul, basira, will be providing insight. Walau alqa ma'adhira, even though he likes to throw excuses. Many a time we find in today's day and age, we'll commit a sin, but then sometimes we start making excuses for those sins, only to find on Yawmul Qiyamah that those excuses are removed because now our own bodies and our own hands and our own feet are testifying against us. Al-yawma nakhtimu ala afwahihim wa tukallimuna aydihim. Allah will cause our hands to speak on that day, and the people will be saying, Ayn al-mafar, where is the escape? Kalla la wazar, but rather there is no escape. And so something we have to be reminding ourselves on a daily basis is our purpose in life, and that is, this life is temporary, and it is all a preparation for our meeting with Allah. And so whenever we come to seek knowledge, if we can remember two simple things. One is dhikr ad-dar, the remembrance, reminding yourself of the true life, the home in the hereafter. For those who can do this, they push all worldly thought to the back of their mind, and they focus on their akhirah, they focus on their relationship with Allah, and they focus on their meeting with Allah and what their situation is going to be like when they meet Allah. They find that Allah opens their heart and He allows ilm and nur to be filled in those hearts. Which is why we always begin with the reminder to rectify our intentions. And why are we here? Why are we studying asma wa sifat? As Allah He mentions, first know that la ilaha illallah, that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, fastaghfir li dhanbik, and then seek istighfar for your sins. And so we find that knowledge comes before action. Sometimes when we're doing action and we don't have the required knowledge for it before that, then those actions can be broken in ways. Which is why we always have to be going over our intentions. May Allah perfect our intentions for us. And also knowing the virtue and the status of ma'rifah. What is ma'rifah? Knowledge of Allah. Knowledge that reminds you of Allah. Knowledge of tawheed. Knowledge of the names and the attributes. Asma wa sifat. All of this comes down to ma'rifah. It is the highest form of knowledge that one can attain. And those who can attain this and allow their hearts to absorb this, they become the best of the people. Which is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned in narrations. He would ask some of the companions, what is the greatest ayah in the Quran? They responded saying, Ayatul Kursi. Why? Because it is a description of Allah. Likewise, Surah Fatiha is known as the greatest surah in the entire Quran. How does it begin? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Maliki, Yawmiddin. These are descriptions of Allah. Take Surah Ikhlas. The one surah, Surah Ikhlas, is equivalent to 1/3 of the Quran. What is it? A description of Allah. And so that which describes Allah, it is raised in virtue over other things. Which is why even then, I think last week somebody was saying that it sounded as though I was saying that your intention for sitting here right now is not for ishraq, but rather is to learn about Allah. That stands true. Because if you have to compare the two in virtue, learning about Allah is more virtuous. We give the example of Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah. He used to say that rather than standing the entire night for Qiyam al-Layl, I would prefer to spend a couple of hours maybe, or maybe a few minutes just pondering over the names of Allah and the ayat of Allah and the Quran, and maybe just, reflecting over some ahadith. Because then that would increase one in knowledge, it would open his heart, it would soften his heart. So when he offers his tahajjud or qiyam al-layl, which is just 20 minutes long instead of the entire night, that 20 minutes is better than the entire night. Why? Because his heart is aware, his heart is opened, he can recognize Allah, and he has khushu' and ihsan in that salah. So again, may Allah grant us all beneficial knowledge. And so today we'll be going over a further linguistic analysis on the name of Allah, or the attribute of Karamah. And we'll also be studying further the analogy we gave last week that we were studying. And then next week and the next 2 weeks we'll be going over the theological analysis, what the ulama said regarding these two names. Rather, Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam is known as one name, but we know that it's two attributes, the attribute of Jalala and the attribute of Karamah. And Jalala being majesty and Karamah being generosity. And there's multiple meanings as we have been going over. As we begin also, we remind ourselves, and this is something to ponder over, whenever we reflect over the names and the attributes of Allah, remind ourselves that there are 4 categories when it comes to the names of Allah. The first is the category that describes Allah's that, His essence. So names that describe His perfection in His essence, such as Al-Hayy. Al-Hayy is the ever-living, the one who has the perfect life. So everything about Allah, His sight, His hearing, His knowledge, everything is perfect upon the highest level. It's upon the highest level imaginable. And then you have certain names that describe the af'al of Allah. The af'al being the actions of Allah and how He treats His slaves. For example, Al-Qayyum, how He sustains His entire creation. And also An-Nasir, for example, how He supports His creation. Al-Fattah, how He judges and opens the way for His creation. Or Ar-Rahim, how He bestows His mercy upon His creation. The third category is the category of Jalala, which is majesty and might. So there are certain names of Allah that's all about implementing or instilling the heart with awe and with fear of Allah, to really be able to understand His majesty so that we may humble ourselves before Him. And the fourth category is all about love, so that it instills in the heart of the slaves yearning to be close to Allah and yearning to worship Allah alone, so that they may attain that which Allah has with Him. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. So we went over the root word of the names of Allah: Al-Karim, Al-Akram, and Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam. These are names related to one another. And of the meanings, or of the names rather, is Karam, Karamah, Karima, Mukarrama, Mukramun, for example, Takreem, for example. And the meaning of the name is to be noble, to be high-minded, or to be noble-hearted, to be honored and esteemed, and to bestow honor on others, to be generous, to be magnanimous and liberal in giving, to be gracious in bestowing to His slaves, to be friendly, to be kind, to be gentle, all part of Karamah, all part of who Al-Karim is, to be forbearing and patient, to be valuable, to be precious, to be treasured, to be the most prized collection is also part of the meaning, to be an object or an entity of beauty, or to possess beauty, to be pure and to be precious and to be forgiving and to pardon. All of this is part of the meaning of Al-Karim. And so Al-Akram, we'll find that there's 2 names of Allah, Al-Akram and Al-Karim, what the ulama said, and we'll study this in further detail in 2 weeks from now, inshallah, is that Al-Akram is the one who is Karam in his essence, and Al-Karim is the one who has Karam in his actions. Thus we say Al-Akram or Al-Karim is Allah, the most noble, and He treats His creatures in the most noble of fashion. Allah is high-minded and He hates pettiness. So when people, they start to behave in a petty manner, He actually dislikes this, as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, that He loves it when His slaves, they have a sense of open-heartedness. They have open arms and they don't bicker with one another, they don't dispute with one another and behave in a petty manner over small things. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. He loves dignified character, makarim al-akhlaq or akram al-akhlaq. He loves it when His slaves, they behave in a dignified, noble manner. He is the most honorable. He is honored by all of His creatures, and He is the one who honors those whomsoever, or those who He wills. He is also the most generous, Al-Karim, Al-Akram, the most generous, the one who gives liberally. That when you ask Allah, He doesn't give you the smallest of things. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when you ask Allah, ask for whatever the best level. So for example, if you ask Allah for Jannah, don't just ask Allah to get you into the lowest level of Jannah, because Allah is the most plentiful. He's Al-Karim. You have to expect the best from Allah. So you have to ask Allah for Jannatul Firdaus. It does not matter of how big of a sinner you may think you are, because this isn't about you. This is about Allah's generosity. And He made a promise that Udu'uni astajib lakum, that if you ask Allah, He will respond to you. If you seek forgiveness from Allah, He will forgive you. All of these are promises, and one of honor does not break His promise. So it's not about your sin. When you commit a sin, then you ask Allah to forgive you, and then shaitan throws waswas into your ears saying, Allah's not going to forgive you. You keep continuing and doing the same sin. And at this point, it's no longer about your sin. Now it's about the honor of Allah. Do you think He's going to break His word over the likes of you and me? Tiny, insignificant creatures created from dust. He's going to change His words for that? No, of course not. لا مبدل لكلمات الله. The words of Allah never changes for anything. The promise of Allah never changes for anything. So that's something we remind ourselves. Subhanallah, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. So expect the best from Allah when you understand who Al-Kareem is, that He loves to lavish His gifts upon His slaves. May Allah grant us all the best expectations of Him. Al-Kareem, Al-Ikram, or Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam. Ikram is an adjective, so it's not a name of Allah, but it is a description or an adjective of the name Kareem and Ikram. And He is friendly, He is kind, He is gentle with His slaves, He is forbearing when they sin, and He is patient when they blaspheme Him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, nobody is more patient than Allah. They claim that He has a son, they worship other than Him, and He is patient with those slaves. And then He is quick to forgive. So if they have to turn to Allah and ask Him to forgive, He forgives them immediately. And He loves to pardon. Allahumma innaka afu. Allah is al-afu. Tuhibbul afwa. He loves to pardon. What is pardon? Where He wipes out the sins completely. So maghfirah is usually when He covers those sins. And then afwa is when He completely wipes out the sins. And that's what He loves to do for His slaves. Just wipe out the sin completely. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. That's Allah. Allahu Akbar. And so He loves to do that for His slaves. Al-Akram, Al-Kareem. He is the one who is precious. As we know that Kareem is described in the Arabic language, that the Arabs would, when it came to a precious stone, such as a diamond or a ruby or anything as such, they would refer to it as Kareem. Something that is valuable like gold, they would refer to that as Kareem. And Allah is Al-Kareem. Allah is Al-Akram. He is the most precious and most beloved and treasured by all of His creation. He is always kept close to the hearts of those who believe in Him. And they are always thinking of Him. They are always finding ways to attain His pleasure, because nothing is more precious to them than His pleasure and being close to Him. And also His gifts, His favors upon them, they are, it is precious to them. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, be a good neighbor to the favors of Allah. Reciprocate the favors of Allah. When Allah bestows something upon you, treasure it, because this is the favor of Allah. We shouldn't be willing to just compromise it or anything as such. May Allah grant us all a good understanding yet again. And so they treasure His gifts, they treasure Him and His favors upon them. Al-Kareem is the most valuable. He is Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, the owner and the one who assigns value to His slaves. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We honored and we assigned value to the children of Adam. We raised them in status and we preferred them over the rest of the creation. So if you look at Allah, He has many different creations. He has the angels, He has the jinn, He has the planets and the trees and everything, the animals. And above all of them, He gave value to humankind. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. When we understand this, we realize that we don't need to go seek value from anybody else. We don't need to seek approval from anybody else. When it is Allah, Al-Kareem, Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, the one who values His slaves. He values certain individuals over others. And He gives certain value to certain actions over others. And He removes value from other actions. What do we mean? So when it comes to the righteous actions, He assigns value to that. And when it comes to the sins, He has removed value from that. Al-Kareem is the most valuable being to all of His creatures. Again, nothing is more valuable to them than Allah Himself. And they are, like we mentioned, He is precious to them. Allah is precious to the believing slaves. He is always kept close to their hearts. And they are always striving for His Jannah. Al-Kareem, Al-Akram, Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam. He is also the Lord of appreciativeness. And that is again coming down to value. That when His slaves does these actions that He has assigned value for, He appreciates it. Ash-Shakur. He bestows this precious quality, shukr, gratitude. We cannot have gratitude in the heart. Allah owns it. He is the source of that quality. He bestows it into the hearts of those slaves who He wants to see in Jannah. Right? قَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. How few of my slaves are actually grateful. Allahu Akbar. And so Allah, He owns this quality. He made this quality, gratitude, shukr, the key to increase every goodness in this life. And the key or the chain lock that secures every blessing in your life. So the ulama said, you want to know a way where whatever blessing you have from Allah, you get to keep it. Allah has made you wealthy, you get to keep that wealth. Just say Alhamdulillah. Be grateful to Allah, you will keep it. Because لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. So the way to secure those blessings, put a chain over it and lock it and keep it with yourself, thank Allah. And then the way to increase it on top of that, to just continue accumulating, thank Allah. And He's also made this gratitude, thanking Allah, the key to success in the akhirah. All of that just from Alhamdulillah. May Allah grant us all true gratitude to Him. And He is the most appreciative in essence and also in action. So despite Him being free of all need, He's, part of the meaning of Jalala is to be independent from His creation. He chooses to appreciate the efforts of His slaves as they are striving towards Him. And He rewards them beyond measure in appreciativeness. May Allah grant us all again a good understanding. Al-Karim or Al-Akram or Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam. It also the one who is pure and free from all blemish. So again, take the example of the diamond. When you look at the diamond after it's been processed and cut and polished, then there's no flaw over there. Every single angle you look at it is shining. It is beautiful. It beholds, the one who looks at it. Al-Karim is the one who is free from all blemish, from all flaws. And He is the owner and the source of beauty. Again, thinking of the example of the diamond. When you look at the diamond, you think that it is beautiful. Allah is the owner and He is the source of beauty. He is the Lord of beauty. He is the one who bestows beauty upon His slaves. And His actions towards His slaves are also beautiful. When you think about the way Allah treats His slaves, there's nothing but beauty in it. And He is the one who beautifies His slaves with that which He finds beautiful. So with the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah, for example. Again, all of this, it sort of brings together, it's a very, very brief summary of who Al-Karim or Al-Akram is and the attribute of Karamah. And just think about it, the next time you are in sujood, when you're trying to be close to Allah, the very first reason why you make dua is to be close to Allah. And after that, once you have achieved that closeness, then you want to attain from Allah. So when you're asking Allah to have mercy on you, the first reason you're asking Allah to have mercy on you is so that you can be close to Him. When you're asking Allah for His support, maybe we're standing today, we were offering the Qunut Nazila, Allahumma ansuril Islam. Oh Allah, support Islam and the Muslimin and the Madhlumeen and the Mustada'afin fi kulli makan. The first reason we're saying that actually is because we want to be close to Allah. The second reason then is because we then want Allah, we're asking Him to support all of those who are being oppressed, all of those who are vulnerable across the globe. Again, may Allah alleviate it of the difficulties we are seeing. May Allah ease all of the trials and the tribulations that has befallen the Ummah at the current moment. May Allah grant us all ease and afiyah. Allahu Akbar. And so when you're in sujood or when you're making dua the next time and you know that He is the most precious to you, and He is the most precious to your heart, that His pleasure, Him being happy with you, there's nothing more valuable and priceless to you than that. That is your most prized collection, the pleasure of Allah. That you would do anything for Allah to be pleased with you, even no matter what it may be. And you would stay away from whatever it takes to ensure that you do not lose that pleasure of Allah, that He is the most valuable to you. And just try to think about that when you are in sujood, knowing who Al-Karim is. And so conducting, or rather to go over the analogy we gave last week, and we were studying this analogy from the angle of Jalala. This week we'll try and study it from the angle of Karamah, just to finalize and to complete the study and to give us a deeper understanding from the linguistic meanings of these names. So at this point, we listed out what makes a person, if you recall, Jalala, esteemed, respected or admired, or feared or intimidated in the sight of man. That which man would lower himself for, that which man would strive for. And the basic things is wealth, beauty, fame, authority, might or strength, or entertainment or knowledge. These are things that every single human, they run after, no matter who they may be, because this is an intrinsic value in the human being, that we search for these things. And sometimes when we don't make the connection that Allah is the source, He is the Lord of all of this, Dhul Jalal, the one who possesses this majesty, it covers all of these meanings. The Lord of wealth, the Lord of beauty, the Lord of fame, of authority, of might, of punishment, of entertainment, of knowledge. It is all covered in Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam. So you will find that mankind, they will bend over backwards and lick the feet of those who possess these things, but they don't make the connection and direct themselves to Allah instead. That's the irony in it. May Allah protect us all. So you look at those who chase after beauty. And one thing that we should find is that those who possess these attributes, whether it be wealth, whether it be beauty or fame or authority or might or anything as such, when they come to treating people, it's usually rubbish. The way they treat people is usually rubbish. How many young men do we have today, for example? They've had their hearts broken when it comes to chasing after beauty in the wrong manner. We'll find many people today, it's a common thing now where there may be a beautiful person. And this is also regarding our sisters. And so because of that beauty, they are smitten by it. They chase after it. And then those who possess this beauty, they use and they abuse and they manipulate and do all these things. This is how humankind is. When we start giving the wrong people attention, they will just use and abuse. And then once they're done, throw you aside and leave you to just rot away. May Allah protect us. I mean, even in today's day and age, we find too many men, they are complaining of women divorcing them and then going to the secular courts and taking half their property and this and this and that. And subhanallah, if these people only knew who Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam is, the Lord of beauty, so that we wouldn't chase after beauty, and rather we would be focusing on earning the pleasure of Allah. And in this case, make no distinction. We're not going to just sit over here, give them a pat on the back and say, better luck next time. But if they followed the sunnah, they find that this would not have happened to them. If they followed the advice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you marry a person for one of 4 reasons. One is beauty, one is wealth or status, and deen. And choose deen, otherwise you will be the loser. Now these people, they don't choose deen. They don't choose a woman who knows aqeedah, who knows Allah, who knows Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and is striving to fulfill the sharia, striving to be obedient to Allah and His Messenger, so that when problems happen and they run into the secular courts, whose fault is it? Your fault. Don't blame anybody, blame yourself, because that's the reality of it. And that's what we find. If we don't follow the sunnah, Allah has mentioned in Surah Nisa that you will be the losers, that we will all be the losers. And actually Allah, He refers to these people as the munafiqeen. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا, come to what Allah and His Messenger has revealed, or to what Allah and His Messenger has judged regarding something. رَأَيْتَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يَصُدُّونَ عَنْكَ سُدُودًا. You will see the munafiqeen running away. No, I just want to do my own thing. إِلَّا إِحْسَانًا وَتَوْفِيقًا. I'm just going to conduct ihsan and tawfiq in my own way that I see. Allah says, what's going to happen to these people when the musibah befalls them? How many people they're getting divorced today after 2 months and 3 months because they didn't follow the sunnah? And this is the result we see. Proof. Subhanallah, sadaqallahu al-azim. Allah is the truthful. We find this. If we do not want to follow the sunnah, this is what happens. So at the same time, we will say, look, you need to study the sunnah and you need to perfect your relationship with Allah and adorn yourself with the teaching of the sunnah, and these things will not be happening to you. Rarely will you find a person who follows the sunnah and they get married the correct way, following the deen of Allah, that they find misery in their marriage, or that they find a lack of barakah. People, they go and they have extravagant weddings, for example, only to find problems, problem after problem thereafter. May Allah protect us all. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. Even with our sisters, how many of them, they have had their hearts broken because they go and they chase after a man who may possess either wealth or fame or authority or might or any of these things. And again, they get used and they get abused. How many of our sisters today, they are willing to flaunt or remove their hijab and flaunt their beauty just to receive attention and the approval of these very same twisted men? Again, if they knew who Allah is, Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, the Lord of all of this that their hearts seek and desire, and the one who would treat them in a way that they would appreciate. Part of the meaning of Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam is His actions towards you, you can always appreciate it. There would never be a time when you would think about how Allah has treated you. Even when Allah puts you in a difficulty, and then you come out of that difficulty sooner or later, and years down the line you look back and you're like, you know what? Alhamdulillah. If I didn't go through that difficulty, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be as close to Allah as I am today. And so there's never a time when you would not be able to appreciate the actions of Allah towards you. The believer always values this. They value the actions of Allah towards them. They want the special attention of Allah Himself, not other people. And so if they learnt about their Lord, both men and women, and they directed all of their yearning to seeking His attention and His approval, knowing His majesty, knowing how He treats His slaves, then all of these issues, we wouldn't find it happening. May Allah grant us all again a good understanding. The simple thing is, get closer to Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, the Lord of beauty, and He is the one who will give you a spouse who is beautiful, both inside and out. Sometimes we find, oh, if I'm just going to look after deen, this is what we say. Rasulullah ﷺ said, just go for deen. But sometimes, we are human beings. We also want somebody who has good looks. Well, don't you think Allah, the Lord of beauty, will bestow that beauty to you in such a way that every time you look at your spouse, you will be happy? Not only with the outer appearance, but even inside. Even with their character, with their deen, with their akhlaq, and how they help you also get closer to Allah. Because you went towards that in the correct manner. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. Get closer to Allah, and then done. Men will come today, they'll be like, oh, we want somebody who's equivalent to like the Hur al-Ain. MashaAllah. Simple answer. Get close to Allah, then ask Him. Why? He will give it. Because He said in the hadith, لَإِنْ سَأَلَنِي, if my slave, my beloved slave, the one close to me, has to ask me, لَأُعْطِيَنَّ, I will definitely give it to him. He uses the emphatic lam over here, which means that without a doubt, nothing would stop Allah from giving it to you. So just get to Allah, then ask Allah for whatever you want. And another example we want to give is, imagine, there are 1,000 men lining up because the most beautiful woman on earth is available for marriage. And they're all lining up to see if they can get married to that woman. And she has only one condition: good akhlaq, good character like Rasulullah ﷺ. Each one of those 1,000 men, they would be trying their best to behave exactly like Muhammad ﷺ at that point. But then when it comes to the sunnah itself, we don't value it the same way. So we would try to behave like Muhammad ﷺ if it came to something such as chasing after beauty, but we don't see the beauty in his sunnah itself, which is why we tend to neglect it. He is Akramur Rusul. He is the most honored of all the Anbiya. That includes his sunnah. His sunnah is the most precious way of life. It is the most beautiful way to be. His character, his akhlaq, the way he was, even when he was alone, the way he used to sit and eat, the way he used to sleep, the way he used to lie down, the way he used to walk, the way he used to talk, all of it is the best way. May Allah make us all like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah grant us all good character. And so we find people, they will chase after wealth. And this is also a very common scenario. Rather, it is the most common, and it requires an entire study in itself. So we'll just make it very, very brief, because one of Shaitan's main ways of deceiving mankind is to make them fear poverty, to make them fear poverty and to chase after money. If you look at a majority of men, when it comes to wealth today, they will be willing to sell their own mothers to become a billionaire. They will be willing to kill their own children to become a billionaire. If that's what it means, if that's what it takes, many of our people, they will sell all of their morals and their principles just to attain. Majority of men, they fail to become rich. If you look at the reality, majority of men fail to become rich. And then what do? They live the entirety of their lives in depression, in a form of depression. And then they just resent those who have money. They resent those who Allah gave wealth to. And they find this hasad in their hearts. And so then they live a life filled with misery, filled, with jealousy for others, always trying their luck. And it never ever works. If these people just knew who Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam was, get close to the Lord of wealth, He'll make you wealthy anyways. It's a simple thing. Another example, if you were offered £1 billion, think about it. Let's say a man comes to you today and says, look, I'm going to sign you a check of £1 billion. Imagine what you can do with £1 billion. How many people from the Ummah you could help, for example. But you only have to do the following, and that is wake up for tahajjud as much as you can. And stay in sujood for a long time, making as much dua as you can. And make sure that you offer your 5 salah on a daily basis, but slowly, with ihsan. Understand every single word you are saying in your salah. And do your adhkar al-subah wal-masa wal-nawm. And practice and try to perfect your tajweed as much as you can. Just that. I'll give you £1 billion. We'll find majority of the people, they will leave their works and they'll focus just on that. They will focus just on that. Because we place value in that. £1 billion to us is valuable. But what about when Allah is the Lord of value and He said, just for the sunnah of Fajr, it is better than the entire world. So take that £1 billion and add everything of this dunya on top of it. The 2 sunnah rak'ah for Fajr is better than all of that. What about the fara'id? What about tahajjud? What about adhkar al-subah wal-masa thereafter? We can only imagine the amount of value Allah has placed in all these things. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. We find people, they chase after entertainment. Today we find the youth, they want to play games all day. We find people, they are at the age of 40 now, and all they can think about is playing games and watching TV and binge watching Netflix and movies and this and that. And people live their life in such a way, they work their entire week just to spend it and splash it on Friday nights and Saturday nights in the pubs and the clubs, or with the latest movie, or when's the next singer coming to the country so that they can go. This is how people live. Entertainment. They say, YOLO, you only live once. Life is short, enjoy it whilst you can. They forget that eternity in Jahannam is too long actually. Life may be short, but eternity in Jahannam is way too long. May Allah protect us all from that. And so we find this is what people, all they want to do now is chase after this lahu, this entertainment. And the more they chase after it, the more empty they feel inside. And then when they start feeling empty inside, their hearts become hard. So now they want to feel again. Now they need the drugs. And you see them just chasing the drugs. But maybe then they are having pain. They want to forget. So when it comes to feeling again, they will take the drugs. When it comes to forgetting the pain, they will take the alcohol. And they live their lives in this way. Just misery upon misery. If only they knew who Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam is. Part of the meaning of Ikram is to entertain a guest. And literally when Allah describes Jannah, He describes it as amusement and entertainment for the believers. Inna ashabal jannatil yawma fi shughulin fakihun. On that day, the companions of Jannah, they will be admitted amusing themselves. What amusement is Allah speaking about here? Hum wa azwajuhum fi dhilal. Them and their spouses underneath shades. What do you think they're doing? Playing hide and seek? The adult version, yes. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. And this is just the beginning of Jannah. Amusement upon amusement. And maybe we'll be sitting over here thinking, why is he speaking of this when we have youngsters around? Actually, if they know of this now, they will not fall into zina sooner or later in their lives. What Allah has promised the people of Jannah. May Allah grant us all a good understanding yet again. So yes, when you say Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, included in that meaning is the Lord of entertainment. The one who will entertain his slaves. The one who will treat his slaves in a beautiful manner in Jannah. He will amuse them in Jannah. May Allah grant us all Jannatul Firdaus. Allahu Akbar. When it comes to chasing after authority or might or strength, the simple example is happening right now. First let's start. Abu Jahl. He denied Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for one reason alone. Because if he accepted Islam and he accepted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he would lose his authority. So a person will be willing to deny the truth. And he said that there's nothing like the Quran. It's mentioned that he acknowledged the truthfulness of the Quran in secret, in private with his people. But he just wouldn't accept it because he would lose the authority. So if a person is willing to reject the truth after knowing that it's the truth, only to hold on to authority, and may Allah protect us all from that. Today the Arab leaders, for example, they refuse to aid the Ummah, as the Zionist hypocrites would say, that if you want to protect your interests, remain silent. And we'll find that they want to hold on to authority. They need to hold on to their authority, so they will not take action. So how many a man will betray their morals and their principles and their deen and their own fellow people from the Ummah just to hold on to this? And likewise, subhanAllah, may Allah protect us yet again. Allah is the Lord of authority. Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, Al-Malik. He is the King. In His hands lies the dominion of all creation. They say when it comes to might, survival of the fittest, that the superpower gets to rule the world. Again, how many a person has sold all of their morals and their principles just to get some hold of power? Maybe we are powerless over here and we want to have some power. We want to have a little bit of status. So we'll go and we'll do everything just to get some favor from those who are in power, even if it means going against everything that we stand for. Again, if only we knew who Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam is, the Lord of authority, and we have the correct intentions, that for those who do want to have some authority, what is the reason behind it? A person went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asking to appoint him as the governor of a place. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, we do not give authority to those who ask for it, because those who are asking for it, most likely they are going to abuse it. Rather, we give it to those who are not seeking it, because we know that they have the correct fear of Allah. And if you give them authority, give them power over other people, they will do their best to ensure that they serve the people correctly out of fear of Allah. Subhanallah, the men and women in Jannah, they will be kings and queens in Jannah. So who cares about the labels in this life anyways? Whether a person be a king or a president, or your average Joe president down the middle or prime minister, who cares? These very same people would be willing to lick the boots of the people of Jannah if it meant just 5 seconds from break from Jahannam. Just 5 seconds rest from the punishment of Jahannam, they would be willing to do anything. So we do not have to be deceived by the status of people in this life. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. How many a person also, when it comes to fame, when it comes to esteem, being respected in the sight of the people are willing to do anything. It comes down to showing off, it comes down to riyā, again, an entire study in itself. So we will not go into too much detail, but we'll find today people, they are willing, again, to go against their morals and their principles just to get some likes, to get some subscribes on YouTube and Instagram. How many a sister today, they will trade their modesty just to do something on TikTok, just to get some attention from the people. Yet, was it worth it in the end? If only they knew Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, the Lord of authority, the Lord of esteem, the one who, when he wants to honor his slaves, he places acceptance for them in the sight of the people. Rasulullah ﷺ, he mentions that a person, if he does something to please the people, and he finds that it is in the displeasure of Allah, Allah will make those people displeased with him. Subhanallah. Allah will make those very same people that you are trying to please displeased with you because you disobeyed Allah and you chose them over Allah. May Allah protect us all from that. And so this is the entire point of today's analogy that we've been studying since last week. One simple question. How would you wish to be treated by these people? These people who have wealth and authority and might and power and izzah and all these things, how would you wish to be treated by them? If you look at the wealthy, they prey upon the poor. If you look at those who have strength, they abuse the weak. Those who have authority, they abuse their positions. Is that what the people seek? But when you look at Allah, He is Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam. Allah is deserving of such that our complete attention and yearning should be directed to Him, knowing that He is the only one who's more than enough to honor you, to treat you in the way that you expect to be good. Think about it. Allah, He will treat you in such a way that you would appreciate. The ways that you would love to be treated by one who has majesty, might and honor and wealth. Allah would treat you that way. Because He said, Rasulullah ﷺ said, that Allah said, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. I treat my slave as he expects me to treat him. It's simple. If he expects me to treat him in a good way, done. If he expects any less, done. So when you expect Allah to treat you in such a way that you will always treasure it, you will always value it, and Allah will treat you in that way. Simple thing. Get close to Him, then everything is yours anyway. But for those who get close to Allah, very, very quickly they find that Allah is better than everything. So they don't want just everything. They want Allah Himself. Again, may Allah grant us all closeness to Him. And Allah alone can treat you in the most amazing and beautiful and precious of manners that no other being could ever make you feel. It's mentioned that when Allah called you forth on Yawm al-Qiyamah, imagine the feelings that you're going to be going through at that point. You worshipped Him the entirety of your life. You did sujood to Him every single day, from the moment you became baligh up until you died. And then Allah called you forth. Imagine the emotions you're going through at that moment. It's mentioned Allah, when you're having the conversation with Allah, Al-Kareem. At one point you'll be laughing, at one point you'll be crying, you'll be trying to do both at the same time. How is it going to work? Allahu A'lam. And so again, imagine when you're in sujood, implementation. Deep in your heart, you're saying, Ya Rabb, it is you who I want. It is your special treatment that I want. You are Dhul Jalali Wal Ikraam. Allahumma akrimni, honor me, give me your special attention and treat me in a way that I will always appreciate. That's what it means. Allahumma akrimni. Oh Allah, honor me. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. Subhanallah, tabarakasma rabbika, Dhul Jalali Wal Ikraam. How blessed is the name of your Lord, Dhul Jalali Wal Ikraam. Man would do anything for a person of esteem to just remember his name. What would you trade for the most famous and richest of people to just know your name? Or maybe to just shake your hand? Or maybe to just think about you? Man would be willing to kill. I've come across people, they find glee in their hearts, twisted, filthy. May Allah protect us. Just for the idea that she may think about you. People will go study how to make her think about you. What about when Allah says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ? When the Lord of Majesty, the Lord of Might, the Lord of Beauty is saying, if you remember me, I will remember you. You're telling me that from amongst the billions and billions of angels that exist, and all of the billions of people that exist, and how many animals and species from those animals that exist, all the trees and all the creations, I'm just remembering Allah. I'm just sitting over here saying, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah. And at this moment, my Lord is remembering me. Allahu Akbar. What is the honor in that? Is there anything more honorable than that? And finally, we get to the final part of the study. I know it's been quite a while. It's been a long study. And again, we did mention that when it comes to studying these names, Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam, it is going to take a lot of time, just so that we can have that a good understanding and strive to be close to him. That imagine Sulaiman alayhi salam was here. He's a king, he's mighty, he's beloved to Allah, he has an army of animals and jinns, he controls the wind, and he sends you an invitation. He writes to you an invitation saying, I'm sending you a personal invite as a VIP to come and visit me in my palace. Imagine he sends that to you. How would you feel? How honored. Wow, this king, this mighty king that Allah praises in the Quran is inviting me out of all people to go to him, that he's shown me some importance. Perhaps he wants to take my counsel. He values what I have to say. Allahu Akbar. One such as him, it would really make you feel privileged. It would make you feel dignified and honorable. SubhanAllah, what does Allah say in Surah Yunus? He says, وَاللَّهُ يَدْعُو إِلَى دَارِ السَّلَامِ وَيَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. That Allah invites you, He calls out to you to go to the home of peace, to join Him in the home of peace in Jannah. He invites you to go. وَيَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. And He guides whomsoever He wills onto the straight path. It's also mentioned at the end of Surah Qamar that إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَنَهَرٍ. That indeed the righteous, those who had taqwa, they will be amongst gardens and rivers. فِي مَقَعَدِ صِدْقٍ. In a seat of honor. SubhanAllah, the words عِنْدَ مَلِيكٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. Near or in the presence of the most powerful king. SubhanAllah, you're invited to go to Jannah and have a seat of honor in the presence of Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam himself. He sent you this special letter. That letter is called the Quran, to invite you to Jannah. And He sent the best of His messengers to give you that invite. By the hand, Rasulullah ﷺ was sent with the message to invite you to Jannah. How honored should we feel with the Quran al-Kareem then? How privileged should we be for every single second we spend in sajda, every single letter we recite of the Quran? How precious, how valuable. The believer is such that every single letter of the Quran, every single moment spent in sajda is more valuable to me than everything in this life. Put everything in front of me and put sajda and the Quran on one side, I would pick that, because that is where the pleasure of Allah lies. And we'll keep it over there for today. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. Hopefully, we understand the names Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam from the linguistic perspective, and how to behave with Allah, and how to direct all of our raghba, our yearning towards Allah Himself, seeking the attention and the approval of Allah Himself and not anybody else. Next week again, we'll go over the theological analysis, and we'll start with the tafsir of the names, inshaAllah. We'll keep it over there. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana. We ask Allah to benefit us with that which He teaches us. Wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una. We ask Allah to grant us knowledge that will be beneficial to us. Wa rzuqna 'ilman tanfa'una bih. And we ask Allah to provide for us knowledge again that will be beneficial for us. Allahumma ja'al khayra a'malina akhirah. We ask Allah to make the best time of our life our final period, our final time. Wa khayra a'malina khawatima. And our best deed, our final deed. وَجَعَلْ خَيْرَ أَيَّامَنَا يَوْمَ نَلْقَاكَ. We ask Allah to make the best time of our life, or the best of our days, the day we meet Dhul Jalaali Wal Ikraam Himself. اللهم إنا نسألك الثبات في الأمر والعزيمة على الرشد ونسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك ونسألك شكر نعمتك وحسن عبادتك ونسألك قلبا سليما ولسانا صادقا ونسألك من خير ما تعلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما تعلم ونستغفرك لما تعلم إنك أنت علام الغيوب وصلى الله على نبينا محمد. أقول قولي هذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.